August 6th, 1945, 8:15 in the morning. Deep beneath Tokyo, in the concrete fortress of Imperial General Headquarters, a single message arrived. Just one transmission from the city of Hiroshima. And in that moment, 3 years of carefully constructed illusions shattered. What Japan's high command read in those few lines would force them to confront a truth they had spent the entire war denying. America hadn't been fighting at full capacity. They had been holding back. 90 feet underground, beneath the Imperial Palace, the war room sat in silence. 4-foot-thick walls of reinforced concrete, designed to withstand anything. On the morning of August 6th, it hummed with the familiar rhythm of a losing war. Field Marshal Hata's intelligence briefings had become routine, managed decline, controlled defeat. But at exactly 8:15, everything changed. Lieutenant Colonel Yamamoto burst through the steel door. No customary bow, no ceremony. In his hands, a decoded transmission, the kind that changes history. The message was short, fragmentary, sent by Hiroshima's regional military command before all communications ceased. It read, "Entire city destroyed by single bomb. Blast radius exceeds all previous bombardment. Unknown weapon type. Casualties catastrophic. Request immediate," and then silence. General Yushiro Umezu, chief of the Imperial General Staff, read it 3 times. His first thought was a massive conventional raid. Maybe 500 American B-29 bombers dropping incendiaries simultaneously. The math didn't make sense otherwise. Hiroshima was home to 350,000 people, spread across 27 square miles. But the reports that followed told a very different story.
Weather reconnaissance had spotted only 3 B-29s over Hiroshima that morning. 3, not 300, not even 30. 3. Admiral Toyota stood at the massive wall map, tracking every known American asset in the Pacific. His intelligence staff had become experts at predicting American operations. Bomber formations, ordnance loads, damage patterns. They knew it all. But nothing in 3 years of air war suggested that 3 aircraft could destroy an entire city. By 10 a.m., reconnaissance flights attempting to reach Hiroshima reported something unprecedented. Pilots described a mushroom-shaped cloud rising over 40,000 feet, visible from 150 miles away. The cloud glowed with colors they had never seen, purples and oranges, pulsing with internal light. Foreign Minister Togo received the first eyewitness account at 11:30. A railway official 15 miles outside the city described a flash brighter than 1,000 suns, a pressure wave that knocked trains off their tracks. The city center had simply vanished, replaced by a firestorm visible from the mountains. The afternoon meeting of the Supreme War Council convened at 2 p.m. Silence. Prime Minister Suzuki, who had survived multiple assassination attempts just for suggesting peace, read the accumulated reports. His hands trembled slightly. "Gentlemen," he began, "we must consider what this means." General Anami, the Minister of War and the most ardent advocate for continuing the fight, spoke first. "American propaganda. They want us to believe they possess weapons they do not have. Hiroshima was destroyed by conventional bombing, and they are using deception to—" 3 aircraft. Admiral Toyota interrupted him. Something he would never have done under normal circumstances. 3 aircraft, Anami-san. Our radar tracked them. Our observers watched them. 3. The room fell silent. For 3 years, Japanese military doctrine had been built on a single premise. American industrial might could be overcome by Japanese spiritual strength. The Americans could produce more ships, more planes, more tanks, but Japanese forces would fight with such ferocity that American casualties would become politically unbearable. This calculation had guided every decision since Pearl Harbor. When American industry produced 300,000 aircraft, Japan told itself that Japanese pilots would fight with 10 times the spirit. When American shipyards launched cargo vessels faster than German U-boats could sink them, Japan consoled itself that American sailors lacked the warrior's heart. But a single bomb that could destroy a city, that suggested something far more troubling. It suggested that American industrial and scientific capacity had reached levels that made Japanese resistance not merely difficult, but meaningless. It suggested that America had been developing weapons in secret while simultaneously fighting a two-ocean war. It suggested that everything Japan's military leadership believed about modern warfare was obsolete. Intelligence officer Colonel Sato presented his analysis at 4 p.m. His team had been calculating American industrial capacity since 1941. Their numbers had been terrifyingly accurate. America had produced 88,410 tanks during the war. Japan had produced 6,450. America had built 41 aircraft carriers. Japan had built 15. American shipyards launched cargo vessels so quickly they outpaced German U-boats sinking them. But Sato's new calculation suggested something that fundamentally broke their understanding. If, he said, voice barely above a whisper, if the Americans can destroy entire cities with single bombs, then they possess scientific capabilities that render numerical comparisons meaningless. They are not fighting the same war we are fighting. Foreign Minister Togo added what everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to say. And if they have one such bomb, we must assume they have more. The Japanese understanding of American power had been shaped by carefully constructed beliefs, beliefs that began long before Pearl Harbor, documented in countless staff meetings, strategic assessments, war plans, and now, within days of Hiroshima, they would all collapse. But to understand what the High Command finally realized, one must first understand what they had convinced themselves was true.
In November 1941, Admiral Yamamoto, commander of the Combined Fleet, had provided the most accurate assessment of American industrial capacity. His warning, recorded in Naval Staff minutes, was explicit. "I can run wild for 6 months or a year, but I have utterly no confidence for the 2nd or 3rd year." Yamamoto lived in America. He studied at Harvard, served as a naval attaché in Washington. He toured American factories, witnessed the industrial infrastructure firsthand. His calculations were not based on hope or nationalist fervor, but on cold mathematics. America's steel production alone exceeded Japan's total industrial output. American petroleum reserves were effectively unlimited. But Yamamoto's warnings were systematically ignored. The Army's strategic planning documents from 1941 revealed the alternative narrative that military leadership embraced. American industrial might would be neutralized by 3 factors. First, distance. Japan's conquests would secure a defensive perimeter so vast that American logistics would collapse under its own weight. Every ship, every aircraft, every bullet would need to travel 5,000 miles across hostile ocean. Japan could sustain its forces from nearby conquered territories, while America exhausted itself. Second, morale. American society was soft, individualistic, incapable of sustaining heavy casualties. Japanese doctrine assumed that after losing 30,000 to 40,000 men, American public opinion would demand peace. Third, tactical superiority. Japanese forces, through superior training and warrior spirit, would inflict casualty ratios that made American numbers irrelevant. 1 Japanese soldier would equal 3 or 4 Americans. These assumptions had been tested and found wanting at every single engagement of the Pacific War. Yet Japanese High Command consistently reinterpreted defeats as validation, needing only minor adjustments. At Midway, in June 1942, Japan lost 4 aircraft carriers in a single day. The official assessment? Bad luck, tactical errors. Not American cryptographic superiority. Not the fundamental vulnerability of Japan's carrier-focused strategy. The underlying assumption remained intact. At Guadalcanal, from August 1942 to February 1943, Japanese forces discovered that Americans could sustain logistics across vast distances and could match Japanese soldiers in jungle warfare. The official assessment? Local commanders lacked fighting spirit, not that the strategic situation was impossible. The underlying assumption that American society would crack under sustained casualties remained intact. By August 1945, every major assumption had been systematically demolished by reality. Yet senior leadership had never formally acknowledged this. The afternoon of August 6th marked the first time in the entire war that Japan's Supreme War Council confronted their illusions directly. Colonel Sato presented what he called the reality assessment, a document his team had compiled over 6 months but had been prevented from presenting until now. The numbers were devastating.
American aircraft production in 1944 alone exceeded Japan's total production for the entire war. American shipyards were building escort carriers faster than Japan could train pilots. American ammunition factories produced more shells in a week than Japan's factories produced in a month. But Sato's most damning statistics involved scientific research.
His intelligence network had documented American research facilities employing over 130,000 scientists and engineers. Japan's comparable effort? Approximately 6,000. American research universities, Harvard, MIT, Berkeley, Chicago, had larger physics departments than Japan's entire scientific community. The atomic bomb, Sato explained, required facilities that we could not have built even if we had known how. The Americans constructed entire cities in secret. Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Hanford, Washington, Los Alamos, New Mexico. These facilities consumed more electricity than major Japanese cities. They employed 130,000 workers. The Manhattan Project cost $2 billion, more than Japan spent on its entire war effort in 1944.
Foreign Minister Togo asked the question that would echo through war crimes trials and historical analysis for decades. How could we not know? Sato's answer was uncomfortable but accurate. We knew, Foreign Minister. Our intelligence services reported on American industrial expansion continuously. We intercepted communications about large-scale secret projects. We documented their scientific recruitment efforts. But every report was dismissed as exaggeration or propaganda. We chose not to know, because knowing would require acknowledging that we could not win. Admiral Toyota added his own bitter assessment. The Americans fought this war with one hand tied behind their back. They fought Germany and Japan simultaneously, while developing weapons we cannot comprehend. They produced more war material than we thought physically possible, while maintaining their civilian economy at levels that exceeded peacetime production. They are not merely stronger than us. They are operating on a different level of civilization.
August 7th, 1945. Reconnaissance aircraft finally penetrated the radiation zone over Hiroshima. The photographs, transmitted within hours, showed something analysts initially refused to believe. The city center, approximately 4 square miles, had been completely flattened. Not destroyed in the conventional sense, but flattened to bare earth. Structures had been vaporized. Everything within a mile of the blast center had ceased to exist in any recognizable form. The Supreme War Council reconvened at 2 p.m. with new intelligence that fundamentally altered the strategic landscape. Soviet Foreign Minister Molotov had summoned Japan's ambassador to the Kremlin at midnight Moscow time. The message was brief. The Soviet Union would consider itself at war with Japan, effective August 9, 1945. This announcement shattered Japan's final strategic hope.
At 11:02 a.m. on August 9th, a second atomic bomb destroyed Nagasaki. The communication from Nagasaki Regional Command was even briefer than Hiroshima's. Second atomic attack. City destroyed. Casualties catastrophic. Then, silence. The Supreme War Council emergency session that afternoon descended into something unprecedented in Japanese military protocol. Open acknowledgement of complete strategic failure. Navy Minister Admiral Yonai spoke with remarkable candor. The Americans have demonstrated that they can destroy our cities at will, one by one, until nothing remains. They have demonstrated the capability to continue this indefinitely. We cannot defend against weapons we cannot detect until they detonate. Our anti-aircraft systems are irrelevant. Our fighter aircraft cannot intercept what they cannot find. Our civil defense preparations are meaningless.
Army Chief of Staff General Umezu added his own assessment. The atomic bomb changes fundamental military calculations. Concentrated forces become targets. Cities become targets. Our strategy of fighting to the last citizen assumes Americans must invade to occupy. But if they can destroy cities without invasion, our entire defensive doctrine becomes obsolete. They can simply eliminate Japan from existence without ever setting foot on our soil. Intelligence estimates calculated that America likely possessed between 3 and 7 additional atomic bombs, with production capacity for more. Even if this estimate was high, even if America possessed only one more weapon, the strategic implication remained identical. Continued resistance was suicide. Cabinet Secretary Sakumizu recorded the Emperor's private comments that evening. His Majesty expressed that the undurable must be endured. The atomic bombs have demonstrated that continued resistance will result in the complete annihilation of the Japanese people. We must accept terms that preserve the nation, even if those terms are painful beyond measure.
By September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri, Japanese representatives came face to face with the physical manifestation of American power they had consistently underestimated. Foreign Minister Shigemitsu, who signed the surrender document, recorded his impressions. The harbor was filled with American warships as far as one could see. Hundreds of vessels. Aircraft filled the sky in formations that blocked the sun. The Americans displayed their power not through threats, but through simple presence. This armada represented a fraction of their total military force, yet exceeded everything Japan possessed at the peak of our strength. Intelligence Colonel Sato compiled his final report in September 1945, titled "Why We Lost: An Assessment of Strategic Miscalculation." The document provided brutal honesty. We lost the war in December 1941, when we attacked an enemy we did not understand. Every battle thereafter was simply the working out of inevitable mathematics. American industrial capacity exceeded ours by factors of 10 to 20 in every category. Their scientific establishment was larger than our entire educated population. Their resource base was effectively unlimited, while ours depended on conquests we could not sustain. We fought believing spirit could overcome material. We were wrong.
Former Prime Minister Suzuki, in conversations recorded by American occupation historians, articulated what Japanese leadership had finally grasped. We thought we were fighting a nation of merchants who valued profit over honor, comfort over sacrifice. We were catastrophically wrong. We were fighting the most productive civilization in human history, one that could simultaneously sustain a mass consumer economy and total war production. They didn't choose between butter and guns. They produced both in quantities we found incomprehensible. Admiral Toyona's final assessment, written in 1946, captured the complete reversal of Japanese military thinking. We began the war believing American democracy made them weak. Their diversity made them disunited. Their wealth made them soft. We ended the war understanding that democracy enabled innovation, diversity provided talent, and wealth funded capabilities we couldn't match. Every assumption we held was not merely wrong, it was precisely backwards. General Umezu's testimony to occupation historians summarized what Japanese high command had finally understood.
We lost because we never understood our enemy. We attributed to them our weaknesses, limited resources, narrow industrial base, inflexible thinking, when they possessed the opposite. We believed our own propaganda when we should have believed our intelligence services. The atomic bomb was not the cause of our defeat. It was the final proof that we had been defeated from the moment we started fighting an enemy we never truly comprehended. We learned too late that courage cannot defeat chemistry. Spirit cannot overcome steel. And determination means nothing when facing an enemy who possesses both determination and 10 times your capacity to give it physical form.